Chapter 6, Leading Edge Follow-Up Interview with Alex Collier. Male-female relationships in Xenotan society. Val, how would you define and/or characterize the relationship between males and females in the Xenotan society? Alex, how would I characterize it? Now, understand that what I am giving you is only my impression from watching them interact when I was with them continuously for a period of 3 months. I would say that they are equal, and that they are treated as equals. I experienced a moment where there was a type of celebration in which one of their women, who I believe was about 470 years old, was leaving her assignment as part of an agricultural science group that developed new types of fruit and things for them to eat, because she wanted to become pregnant and raise a child. There was a celebration. Not all of the women do this, of course. Many of them decide to remain doing what they are doing in the position of creativity they are in terms of a job or career. Val, in terms of the concept of a relationship, at least on the highest human level that you can conceive of. Alex, I can tell you this. The men totally honor their women. If a group of 4 or more women are walking together down a hallway, men will stop and move to the side and slightly bow their heads as a greetings. Again, there may be communication going on, like hello or how are you? But I didn't hear it because they are telepathic and nothing was specifically directed to me. The only real sounds I heard were associated with their music, and Morani asking me questions, wanting to know how I felt about certain things. The very first time I walked in, we left the smaller craft which was in some type of a hangar, and we walked through what I could describe as a liquid type of light. There was some resistance, and as you walked through it you could feel a wetness on your face. The length of this material was about 4 or 5 feet. You could breathe in it. It was like a liquid, but it wasn't. When you got to the other end of it, you were in this long hallway and you were totally dry. He told me that this was a process they used to disinfect all disease or anything they might have carried with them from where they had been. Val, in terms of the idea of relationships, at least as we consider them, all the ideas that involve codependency and thus don't exist in their society, I presume. Alex, I have never seen anything like that. Val, do men and women walk around in pairs? Alex, yes, they do. Val, visually, then, there's just a picture of harmonious existence. Alex, in my perception, that's exactly right. To be perfectly honest with you, Val, I did not see any evidence of dysfunction whatsoever. In fact, it was one of the most positive experiences that I have ever had. Val, have the Xenotans ever been under a control system in their history to where they were under the gun from another race or species? Have there ever been, to your knowledge, critical periods in the development of their civilization? If so, how could these be characterized? More on the history of the Xenotan civilization. Alex, let me answer that question this way. I have that question written down to ask them, because you gave me a question like that before to ask them. But, they did tell me that there was a time when they first left the Lyrae system, after about 21 generations had gone by, where they found themselves hiding. Again, I don't know all the details, but they were being hunted by another race. They were living in hollowed-out asteroids and moons. They were moving all the time. Val, this is the whole Xenotan civilization. Alex, that's correct, and I do not know how many there were. They were basically living on craft and having to move around all the time, looking for a place that was safe. Well, there were beings from the Cassiopean system that helped them. And apparently at that point in time the Xenotans were under a kind of imposed dictatorship, because they were in survival mode and one person took control of their civilization. I can remember Morani saying that it was imperative that they receive help, because they may not have evolved out of that, had it gone on any longer. What happened was that they were taken to 2 solar systems in the Andromedan galaxy. We know them as Star 42 and Star 44. Star 42 is Zenite, which is now their star system. Star 44 is Tishte. Star 42 has 27 planets around the binary stars. Star 44 has 9 planets, but all of the planets are equal to or greater than the size of Jupiter. They at this point were all terraformed. Val, these beings from the Cassiopean system interacted with them approximately how long ago in our terms? Alex, about 2.5 million years ago, but perhaps a little longer. Val, has the Xenotan skin color always been blue? Alex, no. It was red at one time. Their original forefathers were red-skinned, and I am told that the Lyrans and Vegans were red-skinned at that time. Val, How did the progression begin to where the skin color changed to blue? Alex, apparently it had to do with the pigmentation change caused by the ingestion of certain minerals. Val, copper-based minerals. Alex, it was in the food and everything they ate, and the double sun had an effect on this too. You have to remember something here. We are talking about 5th density beings, not 3rd density, so you have the additional 3 color spectrums. I always try to take that into account when comparing them to us. They do literally live in another frequency. Val, so, were they ever in 3rd density? Alex, I am not sure about that. Val, there seems to be a prevalent assumption among humans that things start at a level of 3rd density existence. But, that's a misnomer, because Alex, no, all the races have been or are 3rd density. Val, so, since the period approximately 2.5 million years ago, do you have any idea of how their civilization has grown and changed since then? Alex, no, I don't know. All I know is where they are now because that's the only way I know them. That would be a question I would have to ask them. General queries on submitted questions. Val, now, at one point in time I had asked you whether the Zenitans were aware of another group from the Andromedan system called the Anextrians, and you indicated that this group was from a star called Mirach. Alex, yes, Mirach is the central sun for that system. There are, if I remember this correctly, 919 other suns that revolve around Mirach, including stars we don't even see. Val, stars that exist on other frequency levels. Alex, that's correct. I believe approximately 130 of those 919 suns have inhabited planetary systems. The Anextrians come from one of those 130. There are 2 other groups from that group of 130 that have been here to Earth before. Val, how about the civilization from Koldas, the Koldasians that were involved in the South African case around 1960? Apparently, according to a question I received from Chicago, the Koldasians were involved in something called Operation Fireball, which parallels some of the things going on today that are connected to the HAARP program, under which methane is deliberately being injected into Earth's atmosphere and an attempt is being made to ignite it. Alex, they are going to light up the atmosphere and burn it. That is a probability? Val, it makes you wonder how many people in the Department of the Navy, E-Systems and Raytheon are on Prozac. Alex, let me put it this way, getting back to the subject of the Koldasians. My experience with the Zenitans, as far as their description of other races is concerned, is that they do not give me a name, per se, unless they had an Earth name that we would recognize or know. But, if there was no name, they would always use a symbol. Now, I do not know that any of the symbols that I have written down apply to what you call the Koldasians, as they know them. I simply don't know that. They have always referred to the other races by referring to the name of the main star concerned with their location. I don't know the name Koldasians or Koldas. Giza triangular ratios related to the Orion group. Mathematical sequences, synchronicity and subjective reality creation. Val, now, we have reviewed some of these questions which originated in Chicago and New York, and some of them you indicated that you had no information about, so we'll skip those and move on. Now, one question concerned the communication via archetypal holographs and symbols and the meaning gleaned by the Zenitans relative to the 911 and 711 height-to-base ratios embodied in the Giza pyramid, which you indicated had to do with the Orion group, and that the significance holographically of the triangle or triad symbol was concerned with Orion. Alex, yes. Now, they have a great respect for mathematics and numbers. Moreni has always said that they always pay attention to what we know as numbers. They attend to the physics of everything, including tones, sounds and numerical sequences. He has always told me that numbers are maps, and one of the things that we personally do now in our lives is that we watch that numerical sequences that come up in our lives. It seems that as long as we recognize specific numbers that come up in things that we are doing, like in phone numbers, bills, addresses, license plates, then we know we're on the right track. Val, just by the fact that certain mathematical sequences, such as triplets, 111, 222, 333, etc., are noticed. Alex, exactly, and everyone resonates to a tone or frequency. If you stay within the path of your tone, then you are in effect moving along your frequency. Val, well, then, moving along one's frequency would imply more consistent perception of synchronicity, which is historically connected with the more consistent perception of numerical sequences and number sets. Alex, Yes. These sequences are in effect telling you that you are staying in consistency. Val, this relates to the law of consistency that the Zenitans refer to. Are there other telltale signs relative to adherence to consistency other than the more frequent perception of numerical sequences? Alex, I would think so. Other factors are the degree of awareness of your own thoughts and what is going on around you. I think it's just overall perception of who one is. But as far as trying to create and predict one's future, and I did not specifically learn this from Moreni or Visais, when I start to create something and come up with an idea, what I do is apply a numerical set of numbers to that creation. Then, when I see those numbers become evident around me, I will immediately associate whatever is going on in my life with that creation. I then move toward that numerical sequence or number. Val, how do you assign a number, numbers or numerical sequences to a specific idea? Can you give an example? Alex, at one time there was a very big thing that was coming into our lives, and we really wanted to create it. In my mind, when I was meditating on it, creating it and seeing the outcome of it, I assigned numbers 18, 19, 20, 21 and 22 to the creation. Any one of those numbers. Val, why those numbers? Alex, I don't know why. It is something that I just started doing in 1985 when they came back. Val, so, in effect, what you have discovered is that when numbers that you intuitively assign to a certain process or creation appear around you, that the perception of these numbers lends itself to the support of the creation you are manifesting? Alex, yes, and I absolutely pay attention to everything that is going on. When this happens, I will stop whatever I am doing in the moment and reflect on what is going on in my life, so that I don't miss an opportunity to move in the right direction towards that creation. Now, I don't know if this process is something they gave me in terms of a telepathic communication and it just became part of the process within me, but the Zenitans follow number values, totally, and consider them to be maps. Val, maps leading toward what? Toward understanding of the process of creation and manifestation? Alex, I think so, yes. Your own creations. Val, interesting. Now, here's another question. Has this race from Andromeda ever give a description, scientific or otherwise, of Hale-Bopp? Alex, everything I know about Hale-Bopp I have already put out there, and I have more questions about Hale-Bopp to ask them that are at the top of the list. I wish I had something new to tell you. More on the Draconian civilization. Val, another question that has been put to me to ask you is the following. If withholding love leads a race to regression and evolution, due to the absence of expressed emotion, then why is it that the Alpha Draconians are 2 billion years old and have not yet become extinct? Second, what is the average life expectancy of the Draco? Alex, the average lifespan of the Draconians extends from 1,800 to 4,100 years of age. The ones that live as long as 4,100 years are the royal line of the Draconians. Val, the winged Chiakars. Alex, yes, because their genetics have been kept totally intact. Now, as far as them being regressive, yes they are, but what is interesting, Val, is that they are not regressive with respect to their own people, only against other races. So, what you've got is that you have this race of beings that are very regressive toward other races other than their own. Val, it sounds like a supermodel of imperialism. Alex, they don't turn on their own people and have continued to evolve within their own race. Val, one of the recent themes in orthodox media, especially movies, is that reptilian species have a penchant for pituitary and adrenal type substances, and that they try and get these substances any way they can, even to the extent of ripping somebody's brain out of their head in order to acquire these hormones. Alex, well, these hormones, in essence, hold emotion. The brain and spinal fluids hold emotion. It is what nourishes the nervous system and the brain. Val, so, is this media portrayal have any accuracy at all? Do reptilian humanoids have to supplement their own internal production of adrenal hormones from outside sources? If so, what does this contribute to them physiologically? If this process does exist, as has been inferred before, is it a function of a need or just as cosmic joyride for them? Alex, well, they don't make the same type of spinal fluid as humans do. As far as their physical needs, I don't know. I do know that they get a rush from hormones from other species that have been in terror. For example, if they capture a human being, they will not usually kill the person right away. What they usually do is terrify them as much as possible in order to jack up the level of emotion and hormones. Then, When they consume the physical body of that psychologically terrorized being, not only are they feeling themselves but the hormones impart a physiological and psychological rush which they enjoy. It's essentially a drug high for them. Val, so, they couldn't use hormones from animals, because they don't have the emotional range of embodied spiritual entities. Alex. Cattle don't have the extremes of emotions we have. They do have emotions, but the more extreme the emotions, the higher the high when the substances generated are consumed by the reptilians. Hale-Bopp draconians might visit the United States first. Because though the United States military will attack perceived aggressors, Val, we had discussed before the subject of the Hale-Bopp complex in terms of the assessment that part of the complex consisted of protocol ships from the Orion group. Relative to this planet, do you have any information on probabilities of where they will come first? Alex, they will come to the United States first. Val, why? Alex, because our military will challenge and attack them. So, they will be here first, and then move to Russia. It's a foregone conclusion that they will be here first. Val, so, again, another aspect of this submitted question is, what should one do when encountering these beings from Alpha Draconis? Are there details on precise protocols as you gave relative to peaceful beings? Alex, I have a protocol for the Alpha Draconians. Run away. Val, that's pretty precise. Alex, that's all I know, is to stay away from them. There is literally no way to challenge them. It's suicide, to be perfectly honest with you. If they are in the mode where they want to do harm, it's going to happen. The best thing is to avoid them at all costs. You have to remember, Val, that the Alpha Draconians, the Chiakar in particular, if they come down here, are going to come out of their huge craft and they are going to look like dinosaurs. Val, do you consider embarkation by reptoids a part of the Hale-Bopp scenario? Alex, I don't believe that there are any Chiakar on Hale-Bopp. Who's staffing the Hale-Bopp complex? Val, what or whom do you feel is on Hale-Bopp? Alex, I think they are staffed by warrior-class reptilian, draconians that are 7 to 10 feet tall that have the stubby tail. They are skinnier than the others and considered the warrior class of the reptilian hierarchy. Val, why do you feel that Sirius B humanoids and the Alpha Draconians are the ones associated with Hale-Bopp? Alex, the Andromedans have said that Hale-Bopp is a protocol ship from the Orion group, and that it contains reptilians in cryogenic stasis. Val, how exciting. Alex, they are waking up as we speak, I'm sure. The Hale-Bopp complex is an incredible control scenario. Val, there was one aspect of the Sheldon-Idle paradigm which is plausible and perhaps the case, and that is that radio frequency messages from the Hale-Bopp complex have been received by governments, and I would guess this is on your ask list to try and confirm that with the Andromedans. I was informed that the messages contained both a greeting, of sorts, and a warning. The warning said essentially, do not bother to try and attack us with your 1,000-year-old weapons or we will obliterate you. Now, with the United States military setting up hundreds of these little complexes in the boondocks around the United States with missiles and high-tech electronic equipment, obviously ready to shoot something down from above, this is a little worrying. Alex, yes, it is. At this point I cannot confirm that this is true. I will say this, however. If you were informed correctly about the content of the message received by the government, then we are looking at an incredible control mechanism on its way here. Val, well, one would presume a controlled drama with the Draconians on the way. Alex, yes, it would be true with any of the regressive groups. From what Moreni has said, that is exactly what these groups do. They find a planet inhabited by a race less evolved and technically competent, and they conquer it by whatever means. One of the first things they do is put it down. They try and make you feel inferior. Val, I guess at this point an overall holistic question relative to this whole Hale-Bopp scenario would be, why now? Alex, I have no idea. Val, considering the assumed dimensional type shifting, would it be logical to assume that someone desiring to assume control would try it now, rather than wait until later when it might not be possible? Could it be that they are fully aware of the Andromedan Council edict of all ETs out by 2003 and are ignoring it? Alex, yes, I believe they are aware of it and are ignoring it, because both Moreni and Vises have both mentioned about sitting down at the council with representatives from the Orion group and Sirius B. I am not sure the Draconians were there, but I am sure they know about the edict. Hale-Bopp Draconians possibly a rogue group. Val, so, with reference to Hale-Bopp, We are in essence talking about a rogue group of reptilians. Alex, yes, I would think, or it is a decision by an entire race of reptilians to act independently. No one speaks for the Draconians. No one. They could also be coming here and actually be on their way to somewhere else. Val, then, in that case, we would be just assuming that they would be impacting the civilization here because they are coming in this direction. Alex, well, they may come and attempt to do their thing and move on to some other part of the sector to continue doing what they're doing. They are probably not coming in this direction solely to get us. There is a much bigger picture here that is all about control of this sector of space. There are 21 other solar systems in this sector with planets who have civilizations in basically the same boat we are in here on Earth. So, we are part of whatever it is, but it is not just about us. Val, well, if this rogue group comes in here and takes marginal notice of the fact that there are a dozen or so 1,000-mile-wide Andromedan Council ships parked in this solar system, like they are at present. Alex, it could be that they will just fly by and not attempt anything. Between you and me, that's truly what my heart wants. Val, well, this rogue group would potentially be in contact with reputed groups that are here and would know that they are under the gun and at an impasse with the military-industrial complex, which has presumably been holding them off while trying to acquire technology for a defense. Alex, I think the regressives know exactly where we are on a technical level, and I don't think they are concerned about all of that in any way. But, they would be concerned with other races in the solar system, like the Andromedan Council, who are sitting there and projecting the message, "Leave Earth alone." The other factor is that those reptoids inside the Earth would probably have the chance to leave here. I don't know how that will happen, but I think they will have an opportunity to leave here voluntarily, and if the Hale-Bopp regressives come in here and try to be aggressive with us, I think their chance of leaving here peacefully, in the face of the Andromedans, would be completely over with. Val, in other words, the rogue reptilians would be challenged by the Andromedan Council fleet now in the solar system, and all we might see is a big light show in the sky as they battle it out. Alex, right. I would not at all be surprised by that. That kind of scenario has been foretold by many individuals, even Apollonius of China, who spoke of wars in heaven in 79 AD. The proverbial war in heaven. Val, do you view the alignment of planets in May 2000 as having any effect on this system? Alex, they have only made reference to how much of a pole shift we would have. Val, so, the Andromedans have never mentioned any significance relative to May 5, 2000, or any planetary alignments at any specific timing? Alex, no. Our main sun already beginning pole shift. Val, now, we were talking about HAARP at one particular time and the situation with the weather patterns. And you mentioned that part of the collective problem with weather patterns is that both the magnetic poles of the Earth are shifting and that also the poles on the main sun are beginning to shift. Alex, yes, it is. Val, if this in fact is the case, is it flipping from top down or bottom up? Alex, if you are looking at the sun in terms of north, south, east, west, what you are seeing is that the south is moving westerly. The south is rising up and the north is going east. It's strolling towards us, but at an angle. And the magnetic field of the Earth, and in fact all the planets in the solar system, are responding to this process. Val, we have a second smaller sun that is behind the main sun that we normally see. Is the shifting of the main sun affecting the other one? Alex, I don't know. Val, that might be a question to go on the list. Alex, I know the second sun is denser, heavier and not as hollow as the sun we see. The Hale-Bopp Companion. Val, another question which was submitted is as follows, in view of the probable scenarios forthcoming in February-March 1997 and the arrival of Hale-Bopp, if in fact the companion to HB is larger in mass than Earth, will that create mass gravitational effects on Earth with geological consequences? Alex, no, it would not, because it is a craft, not a planet. It generates and controls its own force field, and the extent of it, from within. It is different than when you are dealing with a solid mass. It has an energy field which can be manipulated. It is totally controlled. The only way a ship of that size could cause a problem is if they specifically wanted it to cause a problem. Val, now, when we are looking at the HB complex, I was informed by a friend who actually went out there out of body and looked at it, and he said that he saw a long tube-like propulsion unit with 4 pi-shaped components, presumably the occupied areas, attached to it. If you looked at it from the end it would seem to be a cross shape in the middle of a circle. What about the companion? Alex, All I know about the Compendium is that it came out of a star system in the constellation Cancer. That's all I know, but if you remember when I first started talking about Hale-Bopp in 1995, the Andromedans had said that another craft was on its way from the constellation Cancer and would join it. That was 2 years ago, and here it is. Val, has there ever been any kind of discussion that involves what part of the HB structure will go where when it comes into this system? Alex, the only thing that Marini has said specifically was that 2 of the 3 moons in the tail of HB, once it passed us, would go into an orbit around Mercury. He then said, then your governments will need to tell you that they are here. Val, why? Nobody here can see Mercury anyway. Why would the government feel a compelling need to tell the public about this? Alex, I don't know. Marini did not give me any more than that, and maybe that was for my safety, or maybe it was because the information would tip off others to the plans of the Andromedans. So, I don't know why, and I don't know if that has changed or not. Potential Hale-Bopp tail debris impact on Earth. Val, another question that was submitted to me is as follows. There is a rumor that the northern hemisphere may be actually impacted by some sort of projectiles coming from HB. Is that correct? And if so, what can we do to protect ourselves? Is that why the military has built so many underground facilities? Alex, well, my understanding is that it won't be projectiles, as we understand it, but simply debris from its tail that may impinge on the planet, because it is dragging along some natural material along with it. It is a small probability. The military has built the underground bases primarily with the thought of a pole shift in mind. An Andromedan view of the soul. Val, another submitted question. If souls can be removed from humans in about 4 seconds, then what is the true nature of soul/spirit and what we call God? Alex, you know, that's a good question, and I don't know that I know the answer, but I will tell you this. Once I asked Visayas about what they teach their children about the concept of soul and true essence, and this was the response he gave me about that. We are perceivers. We are an awareness. We are not objects and we have no solidity. We are boundless. The world of objects and solidity is a way for making our passage through our densities convenient. It is only a description that was created to help us. We forget that the description is only a description and thus, we have learned not to entrap the totality of ourselves in a vicious circle of physicality from which few rarely emerge in a lifetime. Val, there's one last submitted question here. Is there any cosmic intelligence that monitors and keeps balance in the universe? Or are we destined to be controlled by the bigger guy with bigger and better technology? Well, I can answer this one. The cosmic intelligence this person is talking about is in fact the universe itself, which is self-reflective in nature, self-balancing, homeostatic, and it's self-conscious. The second part of the question is unfortunately from the Darwinian perspective, in that it presupposes an ongoing situation preoccupied with technology, when in fact technology is always supplanted by consciousness itself. Would you say those are fair and accurate answers? Alex, yes. In addition, during the earlier stages of development, control by technology is only possible if we allow it to happen. Val, technology itself is a limited material scenario and application of manifested creation, which effectively replaces the efficient application of consciousness. Alex, I wanted to share something else I have on the brain from Visayas. The brain does not create consciousness, but rather it is consciousness that creates the appearance of the brain, matter, space and time as all things are being interpreted as a physical reality. The nature of Nibiru. Val, here's another question that was submitted to me. You mentioned that the Lemurians and Atlanteans were extraterrestrials, and you also mentioned Nibiru. Tell us about Nibiru and its role and relationship to us in this solar system. Alex, this is what I have been told about who those connected with Nibiru are. A very long time ago, colonies on Sirius B and the Orion group were having trouble with each other. In order to bring peace, there was a marriage between 2 members of each group. The woman came from the Orion group, where the hierarchy includes a queen, the matriarchal paradigm. The male was from Sirius B. Both members were considered royalty of their respective line. When these 2 came together in marriage, their offspring had the genetics from both lines. Because of these genetics, the new race that was created was given the name Nibiru, which I am told by Marini in the Orion tongue means divided amongst 2. This is who they literally are, a cross between those from Sirius B and a race from the Orion system. They formed a new tribe which has continued to flourish for at least hundreds of thousands of years. So, they are a tribe that has become a race. getting down to brass tacks. Val, in terms of everything that is going on right now, here on January 12, 1997, and all the scenarios, possibilities, probabilities, potentials, the Andromedans hanging out in the solar system, the political situation the way it is, the Hale-Bopp complex on its way, what is your gut intuitive feeling about the progression of upcoming events? I mean, we probably have dozens of scenarios at this point, in addition to the various probabilities those from the Andromedan system have presented. What about the next 12 months? Alex, I do. I think that the end result is that everyone on the planet, especially here in the United States, will be re-evaluating the idea of self-sufficiency. I really see that people will finally realize that we have to learn to live together and help each other. Now, how do I see us getting there? I think that what is going to be happening very soon is that there will be severe racial problems in this country. Control factions to synthesize racial problems to distract population. Val, and these racial problems will be deliberately instigated by factions within the government of the United States in order to produce instability, in order to encourage the population to give up freedom for control. Alex, absolutely, because the idea of racial problems will mask all their other transgressions and screw-ups, basically. Val, all the drug dealing, etc. Alex, of course. You can blame it on somebody else or just create a scenario that gets everybody's attention away from what is really going on behind the scenes. They are very good at this. I think that is going to happen. I also see a very severe correction in the stock market, and I know that they have predicted food shortages, but I think they were off by a year. I think it's going to be this summer in 1997. I really do. What I really feel at the same time, Val, is that a lot of people are going to be dealing with betrayal. Val, in terms of realizing how factions within the government have betrayed the nation for so many years. Alex, yes. I think that the people are going to realize that they have really placed their faith in the wrong place for a long time, and I think the people are going to be overwhelmed with how to get out of it and fix it. You know, when you add into this the paradigms of extraterrestrials and the truth about most of the world's religions being archaic dogmatic systems created by a priesthood. Val, it's one hell of a wake-up call. The year of the turning point, 1998. Alex, yes. It's going to be wild. I think by this time in 1998, January 1998, we are either going to be coming together as a group of people, or we are going to be preparing for civil war, and I just don't know which way it is going to go yet. Val, is there a possibility that an internal civil war would be prevented by an outside party? Alex, I don't think so. Val, since the hierarchy on this planet is ultimately controlled by reptilian factions, would all the efforts toward increasing racial tensions be geared and controlled in order to make the prospect of Draconia takeover easier? Prejudice and racist perspectives learned from extraterrestrial source. Alex, well, we were pretty much in chaos already without needing any additional help getting there. Most people I know are living in chaos. They have no idea what they are doing or who they are. They think they're the person on their driver's license, so I think that the planet is already in the space of severe vulnerability, but here's the thing. Let's take that same scenario. If you yourself wanted to conquer a race, or you wanted to prove to other races out there that humans are not worth bothering with, you would stir up the pot as much as you could and get the population to war against itself. Let's face it, prejudice is an extraterrestrial perspective. Val, do you mean that literally? Attempt to use our own free will against our interests? Alex, they said that we on Earth had learned the concept of prejudice from the Orion group who were here. When they were here, we watched how they treated other races and groups. So, we have just propagated that. The bottom line is, if they do create severe racial tension on this planet, you may hear about it on the news or read it in the newspaper, and this is just an example, but in order for you to go out and actually harm another soul, you have to consciously make that decision. I think what they are going to try to do is use our free will against us. In other words, they are going to try and convince us that this is what we need to do, and instead of people separating themselves from that idea, they are going to buy into it and try to manipulate the situation so it will appear to other benevolent groups that might want to help us that we are not worth helping. Val, but, I would think that the Andromedans and other peaceful groups would know that the regressives would try this tactic. Alex, well, they probably will know it. I know they know that, but the fact of the matter is, if we move down that path and we don't ask for help, they will not intervene. Opening the can of worms. Analysis of concept of request for help. Val, well, the idea of asking for help opens up an entirely new can of worms. Alex, well, I know. Val, personally, I don't see it happening, because I don't see enough of whomever getting it together to make a difference. I think the fact that our race has been betrayed by others both inside and outside our race is known by the Andromedans and other beneficent races. And, the Andromedans and other races in the Andromedan Council know that this planet has been manipulated psychologically, chemically, biologically and otherwise to the point where the common neurological functioning of the human brain in the general population is so dysfunctional that a common consensus is not possible with a large number of people at this time in a direction of spiritual intent that would allow assistance to manifest itself. Now, there is no possible way the Andromedans or anyone else out there could not know how deliberately messed up the human brain has become and how the possibility of general intent has been thwarted. My question is, in knowing that, why would they then say, "We'll come and help you if you ask us," when they fully know that we cannot do that as a population? Alex, well, I don't know that they know we can't ask. Val, they know our whole history holographically about all the things that have been going on here with the perversion of the human neurology and the historical interference with the capabilities of the population in terms of intent. For example, the process of water fluoridation interferes with the hippocampus, which in turn interferes with the ability to challenge tyranny. This is why the Germans and the Soviets used fluorides, and it is why the United States is one of the most heavily fluoridated countries on the planet. Now, the Andromedans know that this is going on, and that's just the tip of the neurological iceberg. So, in knowing that, they would still say, "We'll help you if you ask us." I find this interesting, and somebody has to ask this question. There must be a missing piece here somewhere in something they are not saying. Alex, well, I don't know what it is. Val, the whole question is just a logical question to me. Alex, I can't defend them, and I don't know any more than that. This has been their message. Val, I'm not even asking for a defense of the Andromedan perspective. I'm exploring the logic of the situation and how you feel about the possibility that somewhere in there they must know about all of this, that the only option left for them, if they in fact do want to help, is direct intervention, knowing full well that a manipulated population cannot collectively ask for assistance. Alex, well, here's the thing, and this is my own opinion. Val, that's what I'm asking for. Andromedan Council will intervene, collective intent is still vital. Alex, okay, here's the thing. My gut instinct is, from all of the interest they have had and the time that they have spent trying to figure out who we are, is that they will directly intervene, but they are not going to come right out and tell us that they are. They need at least some of us to take responsibility in the asking. Do you follow what I'm saying? Val, yes. Alex, for example, if you were in trouble and you knew that I was going to come and help you, no matter what happened. Val, there might be a tendency to sit on your butt and do nothing. Alex, right. Would you change your behavior any? Val, probably. Alex, well, most people on this planet wouldn't. How many people know that the CIA is involved in drug trafficking, for example? Val, the number of people who are eclectic enough to really understand what is going on here on this planet is very small, far below the morphogenetic field threshold that would magnify intent to an acceptable level. Nevertheless, if the general betrayal of those in power becomes magnified to a large enough extent, then the consciousness of the general population would be magnified to some extent, but the trick is to get the population not to turn on itself. That's the trick, and I would like to know how we are going to pull that off. Now, correct me if I'm in error, but I am hearing you say that the Andromedan Council is going to intervene. Alex, actually, Val, they already have to some extent. Val, and they will continue to do so. Alex, yes. Val, what you then said is that the Andromedans would like to perceive at least an effort on our part, to form some general intent in the direction of requesting assistance, over and above the fact that they are in essence providing assistance anyway. In terms of asking for assistance, is it a thing like standing in the backyard and looking up in the sky and saying, "Andromedans, please help us"? There is a saying that when you pray you talk to God, but when God talks back you are considered schizophrenic. It was comedian Lily Tomlin who said that. I guess at this juncture, the question would be, if this is what the Andromedan Council would like to see, some sort of minimal demonstration of intent, how would that intent best be assured of manifestation considering what we have to play with here? Alex, They would need to see that intent expressed in the form of mutual respect for each other. Val. So, in other words, if they perceive, on whatever sensory format they're using, that a certain percentage of people are getting their interrelational act together, then they will assume that in fact it is equal to the intent of the entire planet to move in that direction? Alex. Yes. Val. Could it already be at that point now, or almost to that point? Alex. Yes. I believe it is almost to that point. It is why they are here now in the first place. But, they are not telling me the degree to which the intent has reached this point. But, I believe it's almost there. I think it was Visayas who said, it is imperative to have mutual respect for a whole planet. They use words so carefully. The word imperative tells me that it is an absolute. Val, I am addressing these questions now in this way and in this manner because everyone who has read all this material and listened to your exposition of the Andromedan perspective, as well as parallel paradigms, have these kind of questions raging in their minds. Somebody has to ask them, and that's why I have. Alex, that's fine. I'm okay with it. Val, the question of the logic of what appear to be all-knowing people asking for people to ask for help who cannot ask for help might not have occurred to some people, but it occurred to me, and I felt it needed asking, and an answer. Concept of the rapture, psychologically dysfunctional. Alex, there was a time back in 1986, just before I left Malibu, where I was having a talk with the Andromedans about religions, and I remember specifically that Visayas was very curious about religions. I was on that particular day picking on Christianity a little bit, and I had told him that there were a lot of people on earth waiting to be raptured. He didn't understand what the word meant, and I explained that it meant the process of being caught up and taken to heaven. I remember that he looked at me, and asked, "Where's this heaven supposed to be?" And I said, "It's a place where there are angels, and God is sitting on the throne, you know, the classical definition of what heaven is supposed to be like," and he just looked at me and asked, "Many are waiting for this to occur." I said, "Yes." He then said, "This is extremely dysfunctional." Val, he always has a way with words. Alex, for all I know, he may have taken that little bit of information back to the council and, well, they have some protocols that have to be met. Val, what are you getting at, exactly? Hypothetical events changing planetary consciousness. Alex, maybe the intervention that is occurring is being done in such a way that it satisfies all of the concerns of those in the Andromedan Council, also giving us the highest probability of coming to self-awareness as quickly as possible on our own. Val, would you care to give a hypothetical example or scenario, based on what you just said? Alex, let's say that Neil Armstrong went on national television and revealed that there were other races on the moon when the Apollo astronauts went there, hypothetically, and that they gave us a message not to come back to the moon, and that we were to stay on our world that they created for us. Remember, this is a hypothetical example. Now, that would shift the consciousness on this planet so much that it could never be returned to its former state. What that would do is that it would launch us as a planetary population into a totally different direction. We would look at religions differently, archaeology differently. Val, so, in the same spirit of hypothesis, based on what is really going on now, and your gut feeling, could you hypothesize a scenario relative to a hypothetical planetary realization and its subsequent planetary effect? Alex, are you asking me what events do I see that could happen that would trigger this? The most probable order of transformative events to come. Val, let me rephrase the question. Combining your gut feeling and what you know, in terms of the highest known probabilities, what type of planetary transforming events of that hypothetical nature are most likely to occur, considering current events and trends? Now, as a guide, you had before given a listing of events that had a high probability of realization during the next 10 years. You may have given some thought to those probabilities, based on your own knowingness, and come up with a prioritized list of what may be likely to occur before other things on that list that may have the same effect as the hypothetical analogy you talked about with the Neil Armstrong scenario. Alex, okay, these are some of the things that I feel that are absolutely going to happen, according to my gut instinct, very very soon. At the top of the list is the acknowledgement of life outside of our planet in the solar system. Val, it would be a really large stretch between a public announcement of bacteria on Mars and that type of realization. Your feeling must be based on the idea that something else is going to happen beyond any kind of media announcement. Alex, yes. Val, would this something be related to Hale-Bopp? Alex, yes. Hale-Bopp and other things. Val, other things? Alex, other sightings. That's at the top of my list. The second highest probability is the proof of dimension, that there is life after death and that the soul does not cease to exist. Val, what might prompt this realization? Alex, that, I don't know. But, it is within my gut instinct. The next would be the introduction of free energy. Val, this is already happening as we speak, to some degree. Alex, yes. These guys are literally being forced to have to do this. Val, to do what? Alex, to move things along. They can't keep us in petroleum products because it's destroying the environment. Transnational corporations now stuck in their own mess. After losing planetary hideouts, Val, why should the transnational corporations start caring about that now? Alex, because they still need us. Val, as consumers. Alex, yes. If you kill everyone but yourself, what game is left? Val, but this is presuming they have a long-term plan. Surely they know that this long-term plan or anything they could come up with is going to be punctuated by things that would in fact destroy the entire transnational corporate economic structure. Alex, well, here's the thing, Val. They had a plan. My understanding is that the plan was to colonize the moon and then go to Mars and start a new society and civilization. Val, this is a plan that was arrived at by the World War II Germans. Alex, correct, based on information that they were given by Gazay intelligence. Val, who are? Alex, the group comprised of rogue Syrians and Pleiadians. Now, they spent a lot of time and a lot of years, and a lot of energy, putting that plan together. Val, I remember when the Apollo program was well underway, and von Braun and the rest of the ex-Nazi rocket scientists were involved. One of von Braun's dreams was to go to Mars. After they went to the moon and discovered what was there, suddenly the official public program was shut down, the Apollo program was canned, the Nazis were put out to pasture, and the public was convinced to think that planetary exploration was abandoned in deference to solving social problems on Earth. Or, that's what the public was persuaded to think. Meanwhile, the covert program of planetary exploration, in league with some alien extraterrestrial groups, proceeded. That's the way I understand it to have happened. Alex, right. They built structures and complexes on the moon and on Mars, and the program continued up until February/March 1989. At that point, it became evident that everything they had done was for nothing, because they were attacked by the Orion group, who came into our solar system and destroyed the Earth bases on Mars. Val, and all of these occurred at the end of the 12-year Bush-Reagan administration. Alex, of course, it was during this period where Reagan addressed the UN. Val, yes, with the speech about what if we were attacked by a force from space? Alex, right. So now, what they realized is that they have allowed the corporate octopus to destroy the environment, but now as of 1989 they're stuck and they've got to come back here and live in the shit that they helped create. They can't escape to some other planet now. Now, they have no choice but to start to fix some of the problems here. Val, but, now they've got a larger problem looming in front of them. It's their worst nightmare. The thing that they tried to do to us is being done to them. How ironic. Meanwhile, the bulk of the population has been just sitting here and has never realized that all of this has been going on. Alex, exactly. I'm sure they thank God for television. It keeps people fat, dumb and stupid. Val, I just bought an interesting book called 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television. It's a pretty thick book. Alex, I bet they're all strong arguments. Val, yes, they certainly are. Versace, creating a new reality and different way of life. Alex, well, they're not going to eliminate it. It's not going to happen. There are a couple more things I wanted to cover here. I was having a conversation once with Versace about the idea of creating a new reality and a different way of life here. These are some of the thoughts he gave me. Create another domain of knowing, communicating and being. In other words, the domain of calling forth or generating your intent needs to be more distinct. Your physics, as you call it, is a good example of this calling forth. There have been men on your planet who have called for new domains of thinking that never existed. They invented it, and they didn't fantasize about it. They didn't pretend. They literally created a new context for what you now call physics. Your humanity is strong with these kind of examples. No being, however, makes the distinction that this is what they are. I would like to give you an example. Your concept of human rights. It isn't so long ago that there was no such concept on your planet. It didn't exist. Your tyranns did not have any rights. Only their kings and priests had their rights. But most of you tyranns did not have any rights. So, you and other tyranns created human rights from nothing. You created the domain that created the human rights and then you called it forth. You created language for it. You communicated it. And this communication that you gave had power, because it was full of intent. It is the power not only to represent and to invoke, but also to literally bring it into being. This is what your races need to do in order to clearly know yourselves and transform the quality of your lives on your earth. Val, that's helpful. Andromedan view of the astral plane. Alex, there is something else I wanted to share with you. When I first started talking with him in 1985, there were a lot of questions that I had regarding the astral plane, or ghosts and things like that. So, this is dealing with what most metaphysicians would understand as the astral plane, and those who inhabit it. Their reality is one of collapsed consciousness and personal belief systems. They cannot any longer expand in consciousness. They believe they cannot awaken until they are worthy. Val, this is interesting, because it dovetails a lot with what Robert Monroe had to say in his book Far Journeys. And this worthiness comes only from within, and it must be experienced in their own laws. They are stuck in consciousness. We would suggest to them, if they were to ask for assistance, that it be important to burn away all the religious images, otherwise truth becomes very filtered and squeezed, and you only get a little piece of that truth, and not all of it. Andromedan view of truth on Earth at this time. Truth, on your planet, is a filtered experience understood only through your personal belief systems or concepts. We have discovered that everyone on your world has a different truth, and there have been cultures of truth in every society or civilization. It has kept a continuum of light here on your planet. The truth is not told to everyone because everyone, we feel, is not ready to hear it. There are some who have, and would take your truths and put them in a box, and then keep their lives detached from it. The problem is that much of humankind is taking these truths personally instead of seeing it as an objective truth or reality. They would take this truth and make it very egotistical in order to glorify themselves and others, and as we perceive, and through our own experience, a truth is not meant for that at all. They would then create a religion or some kind of dogma again, something which they could remain detached from, yet glorify in the eyes of others. And a truth has nothing to do with your earth religions. The secret, wondrous nature of spirit has nothing to do with your religions. You are all multidimensional. Think that way. In order to think that way, your terms should turn the way you understand and perceive yourselves and life inside out, and make all of your belief systems abstract, not personal. Because of your personal attachments, you have cut yourselves off from universal knowledge. You have to have an objective mind to gain true knowledge. You have all cultivated the attitude of a subjective self. The isness does not live inside of all of you, and if you won't conceive of or believe in your own divinity, how are you going to make the leap into the next levels? How are you going to attract and magnetize true, unconditional respect and love to you, without thinking in this way? If you do not participate, you will only be a spectator. You will not watch or participate in the plan for growth and evolution in our galaxy, and not truly experience it yourself. Val, could you define a non-personal belief system in terms of what was just said? Alex, a belief system not based on personal experience. What I have learned is that personal experience is really the only true basis for knowledge that I have. Val, so he's saying that belief systems, if they exist at all outside personal experience, should be considered to be only abstract in their nature. Alex, yes, that's right. More on civilizations in various star systems. Val, changing areas of discussion, could you give me more information in terms of star civilizations that you have not yet released to the public in general, on the basis that no one has yet asked this specific question? Alex, there are planets and specific star systems that I know. There is a small star called Centaur where there is plant, insect, animal and human beings that exist in a setting that would be considered to be equivalent to our Middle Ages. Another star is Crajurco. The planets in this particular system are full of minerals. There is silver, platinum, as well as plutonium. In the system of 61 Cygni, there's planet and animal life, but no colonies as of yet. Val, what about the beings on Siriusa? Alex, there's a race of beings on Siriusa. The humans there are called the Katae. They are considered benevolent. There is also animal, mammal and aquatic life on the planet. Many of the human races there are red-skinned. Their ancestry is some of the first Lyrans that escaped with the women and children during the war. In their oceans they have whales, octopus and sharks. They are a race that is artistic. They have music and are connected to nature. They are builders and not very political. Their governments are based on spiritual technology, which uses sound and color. Val, and Sirius B? Alex, the cultures around Sirius B have a very controlling vibration. Some of the humans are red, beige and black-skinned. The planets around Sirius B are very arid and are generally occupied by reptilian and aquatic-type beings. Palm trees originate from the Sirius B system. The society is more obsessed with political thought patterns instead of spiritual attributes. Val, and Sirius C? Alex, it is now just being terraformed, so there are as yet only very small colonies there. Val, has Morani ever talked about the planet that the United States military has conquered after using Montauk technology to transport themselves there? Alex, he did, and I have that, but I haven't been able to find that in my notes yet. As soon as I find that I will get that data to you. Okay, around the star system of Procyon, right, digital art. There are planets occupied by 23 billion human beings in 5 solar systems. That's all I have now. I'm still going through my notes. The nature of Andromedan music. Val, what about Andromedan musical composition and the nature of their music? Alex, what they do is as they are traveling, they will record solar systems holographically, or the planets individually, and they take the holographic sound patterns relating to them and blend them with other sounds of other planets, suns or galaxies. They create their music from this. Val, it is literally music of the spheres. Alex, literally, and I have to tell you Val, there is absolutely nothing like it. It's like the most incredible orchestra you could ever imagine, but it makes your soul vibrate, it really does. It's so profound. End of interview. 1997.